Welcome to the Two Marketing Moms podcast.
Two women with 50 years plus of marketing
Integrity
experience.
and culture are extremely important.
You can still say, I don't know.
Stop multitasking and be present in the
Moms
moment.
have balls, big time.
Welcome to the Two Marketing Moms podcast. We are two women with more than 50 years of marketing and advertising experience between us, and we want to talk about the struggles, the fails, and the wins that we experienced while building our careers, being a boss, juggling work and a home life, and arguably the hardest and yet most fulfilling job, being a mom. This podcast was created for marketing and advertising professionals, especially the up-and-coming marketing stars of the future. We hope these tips, tricks, and advice will help you navigate work and life and get ahead.
Welcome to the Two Marketing Moms podcast. Today's episode is called Advocating for Advertising with special guest Cary Hatch. Welcome, Cary.
Delighted to be here.
Happy to chat with you. I wanted to introduce the episode with your extremely impressive bio. Cary is the former CEO of MDB Communications. She has been recognized on the Power 100, the Washington Business Journal's list of the most influential business leaders for the last 4 consecutive years. She is currently serving as the chairman of the Mid-Atlantic Board of Governors for the American Association of Advertising Agencies and was appointed to the National Government Relations Committee by the 4 A's. Cary serves on the National Advertising Review Board and is a board member for the University System of Maryland Foundation. She has also completed the Deloitte Board Ready program to advance diverse candidates on corporate boards. Cary is also a member of the Economic Club of Washington, D.C. and a trustee of the Federal City Council. She is a noted lecturer at several regional universities and is a regular on TV and radio outlets commenting on advertising, branding, and marketing communications. Very impressive career, Cary.
Thank you. As you can tell, I'm a joiner.
I love it. And I have so much that I want to dig in. But I wanted to start with our personal connection to each other, which is kind of one of those stars aligning type situations. We both have a mutual friend in Ron Owens. Ron Owens is kind of an industry legend in Washington, D.C. He is the O in LM&O advertising in Washington, D.C. And for the last couple of years, he and I, we've known each other for 10 years or so, but for the last couple of years, he's kind of become a mentor to me. And we've talked on the phone probably once a month, every couple of months, email back and forth. And in March of this year, he told me, Kelly, you need to meet Cary Hatch. You must meet Cary Hatch. You have a lot in common, and I think you guys would be a great match to meet up with each other. Within a month of him, so pretty quickly after that, I reached out to you on LinkedIn and said, Ron told us we need to meet. And so we connected, and less than a month later, Ron passed. And we both met in real life at Ron's funeral. And I think I'm going to share Ron's picture, which we both hold close to our hearts, and we have up on our bulletin boards every day to remind us of the inspiration that he provided to both of us and the personal guidance that he provided. But there's a reason why Ron wanted you and I to meet, and I just wanted to note that kind of the stars aligning for us to have this conversation today.
He's just a very special guy, and he really was a connector. He loved putting people together. And he loved cheerleading for all of us. So my great appreciation to him over the decades, certainly an inspiration for me. His passion for advertising is renowned for sure. And I'm delighted that he put us together.
I am too. It means a lot to me. So, all right, well, let's, I did some digging about you on social media, and on LinkedIn, you brand yourself as an advertising advocate, which I love. Passionate about the power of advertising to elevate the profile and the stature of brands and causes. Can you elaborate on this?
Yeah, it's funny that you focus on advocate, because I considered evangelist, but I thought it was maybe a bridge too far. It's an understatement that I'm passionate about the industry, and honestly, I'm hopelessly in love with what I do, which is a blessing when you think about a career that's, over 4 decades. but I love the power of advertising as an instrument for good and honestly, a global economic driver.
Yeah.
I love being part of making things happen in whatever small part I can play. And being part of that industry, being part of, again, putting people together and advocating for brands and the industry itself, whether it's, taxation on the industry or just dealing with intellectual property law, all of that fascinates me. And I just love being part of the team.
I love that. Well, you have had a career for 40 years and, you've seen a lot in the industry. What inspired you initially to pursue a career in advertising?
It's interesting in college, and maybe you had a similar experience. I bounced around a bit. It wasn't a straight line for me. I started out as a psychology major, which was probably closer to what I really do today when you think about consumer behavior, right? But then I thought,
True.
not sure I want to go for a PhD. Maybe I need to consider phys ed, as a career faculty position. Maybe it's secondary childhood education, and then into advertising, where I really connected my love for economics and consumer behavior. So from that, I actually tapped into, I think really is part of my DNA. My mom was an artist and my dad was in international sales and marketing, and went into advertising as an assistant art director. Who knew, right?
Yeah.
I just loved helping to create messages in advertising. Early on in my career, I had the good fortune to work for an agency in Baltimore. Steve Weinberger was my boss, and we worked on Utz potato chips, among other things. And it was such a joy. Honestly, at that time, I was making probably something that was considered not a living wage.
Sure.
For me, it was never, and it still isn't about the money. It's about finding something that I adore and something that I can contribute to. So getting into advertising was not a straight line for me. Going into the creative side, realizing I was honestly perfectly average, in my estimation, a very mediocre art director, and thinking, I'm in the right church, but the wrong pew.
Yes.
And I wanted to find where I fit. Where can I contribute most? So it was really into account service and strategy and new business development that I really found my passion, and I hit my stride really. But and that's what led me ultimately to, MDB and the company that I acquired.
Well, I want to talk about that next, but I think it's funny because I think a lot of great account people start on the creative side and have this idea that maybe that's their passion and interest, but realize that that's not their area of expertise, but it's still very important to them. And I think that's important for a good account person to realize that, geez, this is an area that's the whole existence of why advertising exists. And so you appreciate that aspect of advertising because, that's the guts of what we do. And
not to mention you have street cred with the creative department.
Yes.
Right? And you understand production and production values. So that's a beautiful thing when you can connect on that level. So I've always appreciated that 2.5 to 3 years that I was actually part of the creative department.
I love that. So you rose to CEO and owner of MDB Communications at a very, very young age. Can you tell us that story and some of the milestones and achievements that you're proud of?
Again, not a straight line. After, recognizing I would probably be a better fit in a different area, I wanted to stay at the agency I was at, and they said, yeah, we love you as an art director, but, no opportunity in account service. So I interviewed for other opportunities. I don't think I told you this before, I did have an interesting meeting with a firm that I was applying to, who had me interviewed by I believe it was a psychiatrist or psychologist, I should say, at Johns Hopkins University to see if I would be a good fit for account service. And he came back and said that I would never make it in advertising because I was too introverted. I had to share that.
I love that.
Well, and you know me well
So
enough now.
wrong. You're not introverted.
Well, and maybe I was at that time. I don't know. It's kind of hard to believe that because I was like president of my sorority and I was on the pom-pom squad at the University of Maryland and whatever. But it's fascinating. And I think that was really my first, you talk about rejection. You know, being told that I really wasn't going to make it in something that I loved was kind of, you know, my stake in the ground. I'll show you kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I ended up joining this firm at the time, Michael David Brown Incorporated, working with that owner, opening up the second company, which was MDB Communications, and then the third company, which was Winterberry Publishing. We printed limited edition fine art prints and distributed out on the West Coast. So anyways, I got to a point after being with the firm, MDB Communications, for, gosh, about 6 years. I said, Michael, you know, I'm not really doing a good job at any one of these organizations. He says, well, why don't you buy MDB Communications? And I'm thinking, wow, this is the age of 30. I'm young, I'm single, and if I fail, so what, right? I obviously know what I've been doing for 6 years, so there's value and understanding and of the inner workings, at least I thought so. And I said, you know what, that's a great idea. So I borrowed money from my family, bought the firm. But you know what, Kelly, it's totally different when they hand you the driver's keys and it's all yours, right? And as a creative person with no business background, you know, all of a sudden you're saying to yourself, OMG, what are payroll taxes? You know, what is our HR policy? Things like that that you've never really had to deal with. So it was a bit of a leap, but I will say it's the best thing I ever did. I can remember telling my father, gosh, maybe 8 months into owning the company. By the way, I bought the company, broke up with my boyfriend, and moved downtown from Maryland all in the same week. I wouldn't advise it, but I did it and I survived. And I said, Dad, you know, I'm working 18 hours a day. I mean, it's, you know, because fear of failure was a strong notion that was a driver for me. And I said, you know, we've just got so much going on and it's just so hard. And I remember him saying to me, because I even told him, you know, why didn't you tell me it would be like this? And he said, Cary, if I told you, you probably wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
So he had faith before I had faith. And I'm forever grateful for that.
I mean, that's such an early age for that to kind of fall into your lap and you embrace that. So you own the agency for how many years?
That was 1987. So 100 years, it feels like. In dog years, it would be, yeah. But, you know, I'm so grateful because for me, it was my passion. Learning as you go probably isn't as ideal. You know, learning from being in bigger agencies or learning from mentors or having more of a business grounding would have been ideal. That isn't the path that I took. That isn't the foundation that I had, but I had so many other, you talk about mentors, friends, allies, mentors, the 4 A's you talked about at the top of this session. Learning the business side of the business was critical to me. What are the ratios for payroll versus promotion? You know, what do legal documents and contracts look like? What do you need to be wary of in terms of banking relationships and things like that? And early on, I mean, if you're talking the 80s, not a lot of women had businesses, and I would say even fewer outside of retail, no professional services. I can remember, and I think I may have shared this with you, going to deposit a check from one of our, at that time, largest client we had, which is the National Bank of Washington. And the teller mentioning to me that we wouldn't be able to draw upon this for 4 days or something. And I said, well, I need that to make payroll. And she looked at me and she said, well, you're going to need your boss to come in and talk to our manager. And I said, I am the boss. So those kinds of moments, like women didn't really have credit. It's a different world, thankfully, but it wasn't that easy early on.
And you're talking about the 80s. It's not like you're talking about the 50s or the 60s. You're talking about the 80s.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it's interesting keeping your being gracious, I will say, and not lashing back and remaining calm are things that come hard to me, but they're necessary. I can remember working late one night because by that time I'd relocated the agency down to 14th and K. I don't know if I mentioned this to you, but 14th and K in 1987 was a dangerous area. It was the red light district, and that's, cleaning up what I was going to say. But me getting out late at 10 or 11 o'clock at night, there was a McDonald's across the street, and it was me and the working girls in line to get something to eat. It was tough. It was tough, but I can remember passing a homeless gentleman on the corner on the way to McDonald's. And, I didn't have an eye contact, and I didn't give him any money because it was a tough area at that point. And he said, well, you got where you are by sleeping with the boss. And again, I said, honey, I am the boss. So it was not a common notion that somebody my age, a woman, could run just about anything.
Well, let's fast forward a little bit because you've been recognized, as we mentioned earlier, on the Washington Business Journal Power 100, the DC Chamber of Commerce Small Business Person of the Year. It just came in, was all over the media in Washington, DC recently. And obviously you've served on many boards and committees. Can you share how those experiences have really shaped your leadership approach and influenced your contributions to advertising and marketing?
I've been so fortunate to have advocates and allies to say, your opinion does matter, and we'd love to have you join us and give a point of view, not just on communications, but as you know, I'm a native Washingtonian, so I've been around a bit. I was born in Washington. I moved all over the country as a child, but each time coming back to the DC region, and of course, moved my company downtown when I bought it. But I think by offering help and assistance, and honestly not expecting a whole lot back, just doing what I love and lending a helping hand and making that offer opens up doors for you. Because you know what? People like to work with people they know, trust, and admire. Yes. And so how do they know you? They know you because you've served on, a committee for the American Lung Association, or you've helped out with the Board of Trade, or you've done some initiatives for Samaritan Inns, or I consider those opportunities to meet other people, understand other opportunities, and people are generous for the most part, and will say, we'd love to have you join us. And as far as advertising goes, I think that because I have had some hard knocks or hard lessons, I bring that experience as a business owner. When there's an issue, and this happens episodically, where there's an legislation that's going through consideration for taxation. Honestly, you'll love this for your mom audience. My first time to testify in front of DC City Council, I was 9 months pregnant. And but what a perfect optic, right? They were looking to increase the taxation on advertising in the District of Columbia, and I testified as a woman business owner, 9 months pregnant. So, but and I said, looky, I'd love to keep my business here, but why wouldn't I move to Roslyn? Why wouldn't I move to Bethesda? Why would any client want to pay a premium to do business with my firm headquartered in the District of Columbia? And thankfully, through the support of the 4As and my testimony, we were able to favorably persuade council, and it didn't pass. So, at any stage of your life, If you have strong opinions and the data to back it up and can present a meaningful message, you have an opportunity to shape things. And serving on boards has been a great gift to me. And Lord knows I love giving my opinion and listening to others.
Sure.
And, sometimes sparring, but being part of the National Advertising Review Board is I really cherish that. That is the appellate board. It's part of the Better Business Bureau nationally, where advertisers can be challengers to competitors on truthfulness in their advertising. And like I said, I'm fortunate to be on the appellate level of that. And I love listening to the attorneys present their case, why their claims are truthful, reasonable, go within the guidelines and what have you. So it's rewarding. It's also a lot of fun.
My goodness. Well, I want to take a little bit of a step back and talk about what's happening in the industry right now, because there's so many things feel like they're going so fast. Change is happening so fast. And, with your role in some of these organizations that we've talked about, the 4As and the Mid-Atlantic Board of Governors, the media landscape is just changing. And what do you believe are the biggest challenges or trends that you think are going to significantly impact the industry in the future?
That's a great question. I will say, with the benefit of 4 decades, you can see kind of the peaks and valleys, and there's always been challenges and there's always been change. But what I'll add to that is the thing that concerns me most right now is the velocity of change.
Yes. Yes.
Right. So when you think about it,
because even social media took 10 years. The internet took a while. All these things took a while to embrace, but now we have a new AI product every month.
Yeah. And think about, and since we're in the same industry, think about why clients hire us. They hire us to be leaders in our industry. And with technology pacing the way it is, that cadence to stay ahead of what's going on, and more importantly, how it impacts the brands that we represent,
yes,
is kind of a big deal. So you're right. I think AI and technology, the investment that needs to be made. So it's human capital. It's also financial as well. But I would also say HR, talent acquisition and retention.
yes.
It's a challenge. It's always been a challenge, but since the pandemic and since the distributed workforce, I don't know what you're seeing, but I know a lot of agencies are seeing a fair amount of movement in the industry. And it's you're looking for credentials, you're looking for passion, you're looking for intellect, and hanging on to that talent so your agency and my agency can be competitive is key. AI is a game changer. And back to the velocity notion, I was talking to an IP lawyer at a board of trade meeting the other day and expressing my concerns. And he said, oh yeah, you're concerned and people are thinking, oh, it'll impact us in 3 years, 5 years. And I said, oh no, I'm hearing more like 18 to 24 months. And he's like, Cary, it's like 12 to 18 months. Get ready. So, and I just actually, last night, I was a speaker over at George Washington to talk to their master's program on communications. And we talked about AI. And in the class were some military students as well. So their take on AI from a national security perspective is one take. How you and I look at it from a competitive standpoint and making sure we're keeping abreast of the changes, we're utilizing it responsibly. We pay attention to data privacy issues and legal exposure for ourselves and for our clients, making sure we're using it to streamline our processes. That is key, but also looking at it as a way to improve our targeting, our within guidelines, our personalization to optimize campaign performance, but making sure we can use it also to scale our campaigns responsibly for our clients' advantage. So it's complicated, right?
It's very complicated. And the impact of how it's going to impact search engine optimization of websites is going to be a challenge. People spend so much time and money on SEO, but we don't know how that's going to change in the coming years. So there's a lot of things happening. And I think the biggest challenge for us is staying on top of it and making sure we're using it on a regular basis. We know how to use it. We have people who know how to use it, and are aware of the changes and all of the implications.
Yeah, it's an exciting time. It's just the velocity thing. I mean, the internet, you thought the internet happened quickly. You ain't seen nothing yet.
Oh, I know.
And everybody has to lean into this.
We certainly do. Well, in speaking about some of the, the colleges and universities that you've lectured at, including Johns Hopkins and Georgetown and University of Maryland, how do you balance all of these professional responsibilities with your commitment to education and sharing the knowledge with your students like you did last night?
Again, it's a passion, so it's not a chore for me. So you make room in your life for things you love. I love the interplay, and also selfishly, I get as much back from them. The questions were fascinating, right? And because for all of us as professionals, we want to make sure we're relevant. Yeah. Let's not be in our ivory towers and only look at stuff online or go to a couple, conferences, or even collaborate with our colleagues. Let's make sure that we're having conversations with the next group of professionals that will be taking our places. So I love that. Many of these people I stay in touch with. I was so rewarded. I can't tell you how wonderful this was. A while back, we had an intern get in touch with us from 32 years ago. My God, I'll never forget picking up the phone and she says, "This number is the same number you had in Rockville, Maryland when you bought the company." I'm like, yeah, how about that? Continuity. So, but she went on, it's funny, she's gone on to have a fabulous career, which is super exciting. She went on to be a creative director at Blockbuster and a number of other large major national. We've had people go on, they're at Razorfish and Google and stuff like that. I love that. And I only wish I had done what they had done in terms of internships. I got an on-campus internship. That was not a super great choice. I wish I had gone to an agency or, organization or a company to learn more about the industry. But as you can tell, my route, however successful that's been, has not been a straight line.
Well, it's funny because we talked about it earlier, and in the past in our podcast, we've talked about how we think it's not a ladder, it's a jungle gym, but you had a different analogy. What was it?
It's more like a pinball machine. I feel like, but here's what I'll say about that is, and I tell my son this as well. I think you have to be open to things that come your way. I don't know if you ever played sports or particularly the outfield in softball. Whatever comes your way, you're going to play it. You're going to field that ball, okay? And you're going to make a decision. And the power of serendipity, the power of having, you and I connecting, that's serendipity. It is. And you can plan and plan and plan and plan. And guess what? You could sit next to a CEO on a flight, an Amtrak, whatever. It could change your life. So meeting Michael David Brown, suggesting I buy the company. I was in an organization many years ago called Women in Advertising and Marketing, when women had to have their separate organization. I met a young lady, because I'm trained well, anybody under 100 is a young lady, including myself, and who ended up being our client at Sprint, and then Sprint International, and then Global One. So serendipity is a beautiful thing.
I love that. You talked a little bit about being 9 months pregnant and testifying, and your son. How has being a mom impacted you in business?
I think it's one of the most wonderful decisions that my husband and I made. it gives me another dimension. As you can tell, I'm all in on my industry and my career and my job and the people I help and our team, right?
Yeah.
But having a family and having a child changes that forevermore. It's important for me, it was important to exercise a different muscle, caring about someone else, challenging and championing somebody else, and knowing that I had a responsibility to be there for him, and also modeling. I really value this, modeling what women in business look like.
Yes, it's even to your sons, not just your daughter.
Exactly.
But your sons.
Yeah, I was a big advocate. You remember Bring Your Daughter to Work? I was
Yeah.
like, it's Bring Your Child to Work. I feel a
True.
responsibility to all the women to model positive behavior so my son can appreciate women in business.
I agree as a mom of 3 sons. So
There you go.
So there's a stat that's been going around social media that has me rather disturbed, and I'm going to quote that stat. And it's according to Women's Business Enterprise National Council, the WBENC, 40% of all businesses today are owned by women. That makes sense, right? Unless we're talking about advertising agencies. Of the 22,000 shops in North America, less than 1% are owned by women, according to the best calculation by the 4A's. 1%. So what do you see as the difficulties are for women in owning? This is going to be a 3-part question. Why is it so low? Let's start there.
I think giving yourself permission to take on that role is a big one. People, I think generally are more aware and better educated than I was when I took over, right? And they understand the complexity of it. And I think they don't give themselves permission to try, which I think is a miss for some people, not everybody. I will tell you, I'll never forget I think it was our 25th anniversary of the agency. So a while back, I had contacted the 4A's to find out how many women were owners, not a partner.
Yeah.
Particularly not a partner with their husband, had 100% controlling interest. You ready?
No.
13.
13 women total?
13 women. Now, so I was blown away. But keep in mind, you and I live in an area where Washington, D.C. has the highest per capita amount of executive women in the country, more than New York, more than Chicago, more than LA. So that did seem odd to me. But some of it is barriers to capital. You know, I started off very modestly, so I wasn't really a threat to anybody. It wasn't like I was doing a leveraged buyout of J. Walter Thompson or something. But, you know, starting small is okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think more women are considering it now. I think even more women since the pandemic. So I'm hoping that number will go up, but they don't necessarily see themselves as the CEO and aren't willing to perhaps dedicate their life to that, or they feel like they would lose too much in doing so. It's a guess.
So, I mean, you assume some of it's fear, some of it might be we don't have role models that we see on a regular basis like you, of people that show how easy not easy, but how it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
Is that?
Yeah, I think that's right. And, you know, many times it depends also on, you know, if it's a middle market firm or it's a startup or what have you. But many times, particularly, and you know this very well, the departments usually have a incredible role in success. So many times there'll be a partnership and you'll bring in, you know, somebody who's head of strategy and head of the media department or creative department and what have you. I chose a little bit different route, being the sole shareholder, but then having a senior management team that represented each of those and making sure I rewarded them handsomely to be part of the team.
I love that. So what advice would you give women like myself who might want to take the next step into agency ownership?
You know, do your homework, see what the real challenges are, be honest with yourself in terms of what it's taking and what your commitment can truly be to that. Surround yourself with subject matter experts. I certainly sought out a number of people to help me make critical decisions, hiring decisions, any kind of business decisions, really. I had a senior counsel that did that for me. So making sure you've got, as one of my favorite outside accounting counsels once said to me, the right scaffolding. Making sure you've got the right scaffolding to ensure that you're getting trusted advice and sage advice from people that I would say have been in the end zone. They've done it before, maybe not for an advertising agency, but for some similar professional services firm. Many agency owners also have, and I'm sure you probably do too, an advisory board. So that's where you can have the tough love conversations. And, reach out to other people like me to get advice.
Perfect. All right. Well, what's next for you professionally?
I'm excited. As you know, I'm continuing on as the managing director now of a larger agency and representing the portfolio in Washington, D.C. and the Mid-Atlantic at this point. But I'm also have an opportunity to serve on corporate boards. I'm chairing an advisory board. You talk about innovation. I'm chairing an advisory board for I say startup, but they've been in the works for about 4 years now, for video product placement. So on the fly, scalable product placement in existing content. So think movies, films, things like that, television programming, OTT, but also sporting live events. So the ability through the technology, AI and machine learning, we have identified how to handle product placement. And I'm fortunate enough to work with some pretty interesting and I would say supremely talented people in terms of AI, in terms of marketing, in terms of global contacts with media properties domestically and internationally. So I'm very, very fortunate to be part of that and bring together a group of professionals that can help the organization grow.
Love it. One last question. What advice would you give to young women entering the field?
Jump in. It looks daunting right now, but there's never a safe time to try. Even for all the bruises and some of the scar tissue that I've gone through, it's paid off handsomely. It builds muscle. It builds intellect for the future. There's never going to be a perfect time. Identify your opportunity, get your scaffolding in place, and get into the industry, because every time there's a key inflection point like the one we're in right now, it presents huge opportunity for everybody, and particularly smart women.
I love it. That's the last final word, and it's perfect. Thank you so much for your time, Cary. And I'll put your contact information on the website on twomarketingmoms.com. Talk
Great.
soon.
Thanks so much. It's been tremendous fun. Thank you.
Thank you.